What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Chicken Bucket Boys. As always, I'm your host, Brian DeGennaro. Alongside with me, my co-host, a man who just finished making all the spinach pies in the world, Paraskevas Xenophontos. How you doing, Para?
I'm fantastic, man. The Yankees just swept the Orioles after basically losing to them multiple times
It's a
earlier,
big
2 weeks
turnaround.
ago. So now we got Toronto coming up, and
Yep.
I don't want to face Tampa in the wild card games, man.
Well, we're not there yet, but we're going to get even farther ahead of ourselves today. We're going to talk a little bit about something that is going to happen in the off season. We're going to talk a little bit about James Paxton. Now, he's had his struggles as a Yankee, especially this year. He's barely pitched, and when he did pitch, he hasn't been good. But we're going to talk a little bit about whether or not we think that the Yankees should re-sign James Paxton. So why don't you give us your take on that, Para?
Honestly, this is the debate we've always talked about, but we never brought it to the Chicken Bucket Boys. But if you really look at it, James Paxton, when we first acquired him, he was the reason what was the only reason why we acquired James Paxton? Is because the Yankees were trying to go after Corey Kluber, and that failed. So James Paxton was their backup option. But they traded a promising Justice Sheffield, who's doing pretty solid in Seattle this season. I mean, his first year with Seattle, he didn't do quite well. But James Paxton has not lived up to the expectations the Yankees traded him for. He's been hurt, and if you look at the stats, even with Seattle, James Paxton has not pitched the season with 162 more innings.
Yeah.
So he's hurt this year. First, he had during the playoffs, he actually had something with his back. So during the offseason, I mean during spring training, if you really want to be realistic, he had a cyst in his lower back. He got that removed. And then when it came time to pitch in the short season, his velocity was way down. And it wasn't announced until August that he had a flexor strain in his pitching arm. So you know what happens when it comes to flexor strains.
Yeah, they usually lead to Tommy John, huh?
So we're not going to project what's going to be happening. But if you want to re-sign James Paxton to a 1-year prove-it deal, I'm still saying no, because even if you sign him to a 1-year deal next year, you don't know what you're going to get out of him. Because if he does end up getting Tommy John surgery and you do sign him, he's not going to be pitching. So honestly, I've always said this, every pitcher the Yankees have gotten from Seattle has not led up to the expectations. They have one or two good games. Like look for Michael Pineda for 1 second. He had 16 strikeouts and it went downhill after that. He got ejected after finding pine tar 3 spots in one game against the Red Sox.
Dude's been suspended so many times.
So now he's pitching for the Twins, but
no, he's suspended,
realistically,
isn't he?
and then he came back
for
actually.
PEDs or something.
Honestly,
I can't keep track.
So honestly, as much some people may argue it, everybody can have their disagreements, but I want your thoughts about this.
Well, I think for the first time, I'm not going to argue with you on this one. I was really high on James Paxton when they first traded for him. I thought it was a great trade. I wasn't the biggest Justice Sheffield fan. He had some good stuff, but I don't think it's really going to translate well into the big leagues. And so far, it really hasn't. Like Paris said, he's done a little bit better this year, but I still think it was a good trade at the time. It made sense. Paxton has really, really good stuff when he's on. And just the prospect of that was really enticing. But, he struggled last year. Even when he was healthy, he had all those issues with giving up tons of runs in the first inning, right? Wasn't it like every first inning that he pitched, he gave up like 2 or 3 runs and then he settled in, but it was already like kind of
the only good, I believe the only good game James Paxton had other than against the Red Sox was that one game against Houston in the playoffs.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let alone he was still hurt during that game.
Yeah. Like I said, he's got really good stuff. And when he's on, he's on. But he really just hasn't been. And I was really excited for this year with the Yankees' new pitching coach, Matt Blake. I thought that maybe he could do something with Paxton, maybe get his spin rate up. I don't know enough about it, but I figured he would do something that could help him. But obviously, we didn't get the chance to see that. He struggled from the beginning. He was hurt before the season, and then once the season started, it seemed like he wasn't really 100%. And like you said, his velocity was down, and that's a huge, huge red flag. Whenever a pitcher's velocity is down, and maybe there's an injury there, maybe there's not, but whenever the velocity is down, that's always a huge red flag. And again, like you said, a flexor strain. He's got like, what did they say, elbow issues or something? Whenever it's forearm, elbow issues, it always leads to Tommy John. So I don't have a lot of hopes for him coming back. I mean, if they did give him a 1-year deal, I wouldn't be mad about it. Because, like I said, I do think he has really, really good stuff, and if he could work with the new pitching coach, maybe they can find something, and that'd be awesome. It'd be so great to have him as like a 3 or 4. But
he honestly blamed his struggles of his velocity being down on the shortened season with no.
Yeah, I mean,
honestly, you can't blame that. Yeah, it was kind of rushed. I'll give him that, but you didn't pitch during spring training because you had the procedure on your back, and when your velocity was down when you first pitched against Washington, everybody thought it was because of your back problems. Your flexor strain wasn't diagnosed till mid-August, maybe early August. But if you really look at James Paxton's stuff, in his first 2 games as a Yankee this year, he's averaged 4 innings, 12 hits, and gave up 8 runs. He's averaging in 20 innings, he has a 6.64 ERA.
Wow. I bet you Brandon could do better than that.
Brandon's would be like a 99.00 ERA.
Brandon with his restructured shoulder.
Honestly, we saw some stuff from the Yankees' young guys. You saw Clark Schmidt make an appearance coming out of the bullpen. You saw Debbie Garcia make a couple of starts. So, honestly, I know James Paxton and Masahiro Tanaka are both free agents after this season. But going forward, you don't know what that flexor strain is going to lead to. I don't know if he's going to fully recover from it and he's going to need more rehab. But if we're going to go between Masahiro Tanaka and James Paxton, I'm going to go with the guy that's been dominant as a Yankee since 2013 when they first signed him out of Japan, is Tanaka. So Paxton, I have a feeling, regardless if he signs with the Yankees or not, if he leaves the Yankees, I can see him pitching great because somehow every pitch,
of course,
look at Sonny Gray. Guy went to.
Well, that's a whole other issue. I mean, I think Paxton has his own issues, but I mean, you bring up a good point. The Yankees don't really need him next year. Hopefully, we'll have Cole, Severino, hopefully Tanaka, like you said, and then some combination of King, Schmidt, and Montgomery. That's a pretty solid rotation in and of itself. If they did bring back Paxton again, I wouldn't be mad about it. It's never bad to have too much pitching depth. And I, if they could unlock him, he could be really good. So it's really enticing, but at this point, I don't see it happening.
And I believe James Paxton has had an injury every season he's pitched.
Yeah, he's never pitched a full season. He had injury issues before he came to the Yankees, and that was one of the big things they were talking about when the Yankees traded for him. But it just didn't work out.
And the sad thing is, as much as we have an ace in Cole and we have somewhat of an ace in Tanaka, another big if is, say if you do give James Paxton a 1-year deal, you still have Luis Severino, and you don't know what he's going to give you because ever since he's got that 4-year extension, he hasn't been fully healthy. The only promising season we've seen out of Severino was in 2017, and that was only in the first half before the All-Star break. You haven't really got to see Severino pitch a full season.
Yeah, but I have faith in him that he'll come back once he can recover from the Tommy John. And it would be good to see him slot in as a number 2 or a number 3, where he doesn't have to be the number 1. Maybe take some pressure off him.
Yeah, absolutely. And they always say, if you get Tommy John surgery, you do come back better than ever. So
sometimes,
I'm praying for the
not
best.
Everybody.
Hey man, let's have high hopes for Severino because
I would
if I had a rotation of him, Tanaka, and Cole.
Yeah.
Cole's my number 1, Tanaka's my number 2, and I'll make Severino my number 3.
That's solid. That's one of the best rotations in the league. So hope for the best. I think that would be awesome. And I think that about wraps it up for this week. So thanks for tuning in. Again, we are the Chicken Bucket Boys, powered by Unhinged Media and PTX Media. So thanks for tuning in, and we'll catch you soon.